Good morning or afternoon or night, wherever you are around the world. Thank you for joining this Facebook Live presentation. We are delighted to have several people who you'll hear interacting with us. Our main guest is Phil Cooke. Phil is originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, grew up in a pastor's home. And then when he was college age, he left and went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and is a graduate of Oral Roberts University. Has worked in media almost his entire life. He moved a number of years ago to Los Angeles, has his own production company, and is very well known in the media world, working with churches and on a global basis. Phil, I'm very grateful for you taking time to be with IPHC ministers, pastors, and maybe even some of our lay people who have joined us from around the globe. You met with our Council of Bishops in Albuquerque a few years ago, and your input was really important to us. We've also got on the call Josh Hannah. Josh works with the EVUSA in helping our local congregations with healthy growing kind of ministries, and is very effective as a leader. And Josh is going to be engaged in helping to monitor. He and Jamie Kane, who's our communications director, and Matt Peck, who's also working with us sort of behind the scenes in the technology side here. They're going to be Jamie and Matt are going to be working and keeping up with many questions you want to write on Facebook Live. So, and then they can interact with Phil. We're probably going to go 45 minutes to an hour. Phil, we're going to punt this to you. And Thank you for joining us. And take off and go wherever the Lord leads you in this with us, okay?
Well, I'm honored to be here. I'm thrilled. This is really fun. I always love getting pastors, ministry leaders, church leaders in a room together and talking about some of these issues that are so important. And so if I have gotten to talk to some of you pastors a number of times, but if you don't know who I am or what I'm about, my home base is philcooke.com. You can go online, PHILCOOKE.com, and you can see a lot of the stuff I'm talking about today and maybe go deeper for some other resources. But Doug asked me to share a little bit about what's happening right now, particularly in the world of live streaming. It's interesting that before the crisis, before this started a number of weeks ago, Lifeway Resources or Lifeway Research said that 41% of churches in America had never offered anything online. Anything, no worship services, no resources, nothing online. And I think that's dramatically changed in the last 4 weeks because we've seen people really rev up. And I would say that to encourage you as church leaders, you have done a brilliant job getting all this together in such a short time. It really came up on us in a surprising way. But it's interesting that we've worked with churches for decades on live streaming. And we have churches that have had a remarkable response. And I'll tell you, when you take the live stream audience seriously, you'd be amazed at what can happen. I met one pastor a number of years ago that preaches to 700 people in his church every Sunday, but he has 10,000 people that watch him on his live stream. We also have churches that have literally, we've worked with 2 or 3 churches that literally get as much as a third of their total income just from their live stream audience. And this was before the virus ever happened. So if you treat them intentionally and embrace that audience, you'd be amazed at how they will respond. But things have changed. You know, it used to be before this virus that we would set up a camera and we just wanted to show the live stream audience what a service looked like at our church. Well, now 100% of that congregation is on the other side of that camera. So we have to start thinking a little bit about how we adapt what we used to do on stage into a camera environment. How do we do our worship? How do we do our sermon? How do we do announcements? How do we do the things that we've always done? But how do we do it when the audience, when the congregation is 100% on the other side of the camera? And so what I thought I'd do today is just maybe take 20 or 30 minutes and run through some things that will help you if you have 20 people in your church or if you have 20,000 people in your church. They're overarching principles that when you understand these, it will really help you up your game. It'll take your live stream experience to an entirely new level. And I think if there is something good that's come out of this virus, I think it's this idea that pastors are realizing that audience, those people watching on the live stream are a legitimate congregation. They are real people, and I need to minister them. It's funny. I still have pastors come up to me and say, "But Phil, ministering online is not real ministry. You know, when I'm trying to preach to people online, or when we do live stream, that's not real ministry. Real ministry is when you have people in the room with you." That is so not true. Trust me, even when you use words like fellowship or community, we need to get people together for community. Trust me, if a person's 30 or under, community for them is online just as much as it is in person. So we just have to start realizing this is a new reality. It may not jive with your experience. You know, it's interesting that Paul used the media of his day to reach so many people that it really launched the church. And that was letters. He used letters. That was the medium of his day to reach people with the gospel. Today, we have so many other options. We have social media. We have websites. We have short videos. We have so many other things to reach people, and we need to embrace them, just like Paul embraced the medium his time. Martin Luther embraced publishing during his era. We need to understand how that works. So just let me give you a couple of principles. And the key thing to remember during all of this is adapt. Adapt. I live and work in Hollywood. I'm here in Los Angeles. I can look out my window right now and see Walt Disney Studios, Warner Brothers Studios, Universal Studios. And guess what? They are all shut down. They're like ghost towns over there on the lot. And which makes me realize that probably this is a unique moment. Right now, the church is producing more media than Hollywood is. Think about the implications of that for a minute. I've got friends, really close friends, who are major producers and writers and directors and actors who are sitting at home right now doing nothing, while church people are out there creating media like crazy. In fact, if you're a communicator at a church, if you work on the media team or a communication team member and you're watching this, you know you've probably worked harder in the last 4 or 5 weeks than you've ever worked up to this year so far completely. So it's just an interesting time we live in right now to be alive and see what God is doing. But the key thing is adapting. You know, in Hollywood here, if a producer takes a book, takes a novel, for instance, and wants to make it into a movie, he doesn't shoot the book. It would be a 20-hour movie. He's got to cut scenes out. He's got to rearrange scenes. He's got to change characters, combine characters in order to make it something different. In fact, the screenplay, when you go to the Oscars, the screenplay for that movie is called Best Adapted Screenplay, because they have to take what worked as a book and change it into something that will work as a movie. We have to do that too. What worked on your stage in your sanctuary is not necessarily going to work in front of a camera talking to your congregation that way. So everything we do, we have to think in terms of adapting. So let me give you some key principles that I think will make a real difference for you as you start thinking about your live stream. Number one is don't fake it. I'll tell you, every Sunday so far, I've been watching probably 10 to 15 live stream services all across, traditional, contemporary, charismatic, non-charismatic, you name it, I've been watching them. And one thing I see a lot of is pastors, they're on camera, and they'll go over here and preach like they're preaching to this crowd for a while. Then they'll go over and preach to this crowd for a while. And then they'll come over and preach to this crowd for a while. We all know, we know nobody's in that congregation. Nobody's there. What are you doing? You know, your congregation is in the camera. That's where you need to be. So don't fake it. We're not stupid. We know there's nobody out there. So don't fake it. And I know a lot of you, Pentecostal holiness guys will get worked up. I totally get that. And that's okay. But get worked up and focus it into the camera, because that's where your people are. Focus it into the camera. So number one, the principle is don't fake it. And by the way, along that line, Doug said, I went to Oral Roberts University, and one thing I had the honor as a student working with Oral on his primetime television specials back in the day. And one of the things that Oral mastered was understanding that when you preach to a camera, you should preach like you're preaching to a single person. You know, when people are at home, you may be preaching to millions, I don't know, but all those people think of themselves as one person. So when they're watching you preach to them on camera, on television, on a mobile device, on a computer, they feel like this is a conversation between you and me. So think about that. Think about preaching as if you're talking to a single person. And I'll tell you, as Oral discovered years and years ago, it makes a huge impact. A couple other things I would tell you is move your cameras in tighter. If you had a camera, some of you I know were maybe had one or two or three or more cameras during your services. Maybe you were shooting a video up to the big screens, or maybe you were doing it online anyway. But let me tell you, wherever the cameras were, when you had people in the building, move them up close. There's no reason you should be preaching to a camera 40 or 50 feet away. Get that camera up close and get the shots up close. One of the things I see a lot of is people are shooting the pastor preaching from the side. They're shooting wide shots. I saw a shot the other day on a live stream that was so wide you could see coffee cups on the side of the stage. You could see the cables for the lights. You could see a drum set over there. I don't care about the drum set. I don't care about cables or coffee or potted plants or the curtains or wherever you are. I want to see you. When you're ministering, it's all about this. It's all about this. This is where you need to be, because that's where the emotion is. That's where the power is. So tell your media guy, your camera operator, whoever sets that camera, we don't need wide shots. When you start ministering, when you start preaching, get in close. Dudley Rutherford at Shepherd Church here in Los Angeles has an amazing television facility. It does a national TV program called Lift Up Jesus. But during his live stream, he pulls the camera in, never cuts away. He stays on his close-up for his entire message because he understands that's where it is. Okay, a couple other quick things. Make your live stream easy to find. This is a baffling thing to me. I've been watching these live streams every week, and it's amazing how hard they are to find at some churches. I go to their website. One church, I had to click through 5 different pages just to get to their live stream. Let me tell you, this is the single most important thing you're doing right now. Put it on the home page. Make it big. Make it the first thing people see. Make it easy to find. One thing we know on the web is if anything is difficult, people will give up super quick online. So put your live stream big on the home page, easy to find. It's so very, very important. Also, by the way, along that same line, let's get a solid platform. Some of you I know are doing it on Facebook Live. Some are doing it on YouTube. But I also believe that you need to have a solid platform on your own website. The church online platform that Life Church there in Oklahoma City offers is a good example. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. It's easy to put on your website. They'll walk you through it. The church online platform, and it has a place where you can put your preaching notes for people if you'd like your sermon notes on there. The YouVersion Bible is tied into it so people can easily find a scripture reference. There's a chat room for people can talk. So think about finding, is your home base a solid platform like the church online platform or something similar that people can go to? But trust me, I also think Facebook is great. Facebook is good because the minute you go live, it sends a notification to all the people who are following you. So that's a great thing. And so I don't mind you being on multiple platforms. The more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. But I would just make sure your primary platforms, your website, because we do want to drive people to your website. That's always a good thing. And use this time, by the way, to encourage people to come to your church when this is over. Don't forget, your live stream can be a powerful advertisement for your church. So take a minute. And by the way, let me say this. I'm rambling a little bit, but I think these issues keep popping into my head and they're so important. We know from producing Christian television programs that people tune in and out about every 6 to 9 minutes on a television program. So that's why when you see a football game, they've started years ago, they started putting the score up in the corner all the time or down in the bottom all the time because they know people are always tuning in and out and want to know what's the score of the game. It's the same way in a church service on television, people are tuning in and out. Live streams are very similar. We're finding people are not watching the whole thing. So if you wait to take up an offering at the end, you're going to miss a whole lot of people that were there at the beginning that weren't there at the end. Vice versa, if you just do it at the beginning, you're going to miss a lot of people that were there at the end, but not there at the beginning. So think of terms of doing things multiple times, at least 2 or 3 times during your live stream. Talk about your church. Invite people to come visit when this is over. Take up the offering. Whatever you feel like you need to do, get that in as much as possible. Kind of similar along the same line, when it does come to take up an offering, let me give you a tip. I'm sure you've discovered, it's hard taking up an offering right now because people are losing their jobs, they're struggling, they're concerned about, will their money last? How long will it last? So I encourage you, don't just take up an offering. Give people an opportunity to partner with you in your vision. For instance, What's your church doing right now, even in the midst of this crisis, to make an impact? Are you in the fight? Do you have outreaches? Are you feeding people? Are you helping people in some way? We had a thing in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago where we rounded up a bunch of the large churches here in LA, Shepherd Church, Mosaic, Bel Air, some of the other big ones, Faith Community. And we realized that, hey, nobody's coming to their church. So they've got toilet paper they're not using. They've got cleaning supplies they're not using. So we encouraged them to box all that stuff up, and we sent the Salvation Army out to pick it up. So the Salvation Army could start using that toilet paper, the cleaning supplies, the other items right away in their feeding programs, their homeless shelters, their rehab centers. And it became such a big deal that the local NBC station and the local ABC station did a story on it. It was a fantastic opportunity. And I also encourage those pastors, get your video person, take a video camera out and you shoot it, and then use that video to talk about it on your live stream. And guess what? We found out pastors who talked about that outreach on their live stream, those people responded financially. They gave because they saw, hey, my church is in the fight. My church is making an impact, and I want to be part of that. So don't just think about asking for money during this time. Give your people a reason to give. Show them what you're doing. Show them the impact you're making in your community. It may be small, but whatever it is, show it to them, because then they're far, far more likely to give if you can present a case like that. Just a few other things quickly, and then maybe we'll go to some questions. One of the things that I think is really important is you'd be amazed at the number of people that will tune into your live stream 10, 15, 20, even 30 minutes before it actually starts. So what I've been encouraging pastors and church leaders to do is don't start, if your live stream starts at 11 o'clock in your community, actually start it at 10:30. Actually start it at maybe 10:40. Start it at 15, 20. You can experiment, but up to 30 minutes early. And what you can do is, I mean, after all, if you're getting people tuning in that early, instead of just giving them a countdown clock or a logo or a picture of your church, start ministering to them. So I encourage people, have a host or a hostess, have an articulate person, maybe a couple, on camera, and have them talk about stuff your church is doing. Have them do announcements. They can be praying for people. They could take up an offering or encourage people to give and support the church. They could be getting people ready for the service and ready for your message. So you have an opportunity to minister to a surprising number of people that want to tune in early just to make sure they're there and start. So give them, we call it the pre-service. So give them something to do. Minister to those people if you possibly can. That's a really powerful way to get people ready and primed for the service. So start something sooner. When you do go live, it's say 11 o'clock or whatever time it is for you. When you do go live, I'd encourage you to have the pastor on first. Could be a short welcome. It could be a greeting, but people need to know I'm at the right place. I'm at the right church, and that's my pastor. And I'd encourage you, have the pastor get up and just welcome everybody. Now, this is something you should do even when this is over. What we've discovered is before this virus happened, the churches that did the best with their live stream were churches who made the live stream audience feel like they were a part of the congregation. So before this happened, we would regularly have our clients, our churches, our pastors, during praise and worship, walk over to the side of the stage, look into a camera and say, hey, I'm Pastor Phil Cooke. Welcome to today's service. I'm going to be preaching on forgiveness today. And if you know somebody that needs to forgive, or you know somebody who needs forgiveness, call them. Tell them to tune into our live stream today, because we're going to be talking about that very issue. Now, let me tell you, that makes that viewer at home feel like, hey, I'm a part of this church. I'm a part of the campus. And not only that, I want to support this campus. So the churches that get the best financial response from their live stream are the churches that treat them intentionally like a campus. And I hope you do this even after people are back in church. Please do not think, now that this is over, I don't have to mess with my live stream anymore. No. You need to be thinking live stream more than ever. And there's a couple reasons for it. Number one, there's just an enormous number of people that you don't think about that would like to watch. Think of the college students who are away at college from your church that would like to check on you. Think of people who have moved, who are members that have moved to other cities. Think of business people in your church that are traveling. My wife and I travel an enormous amount working with churches and ministries around the world. And every Sunday, no matter where we are, guess what? My wife will pop open her laptop and we'll watch the live stream of our church back home in LA. So there's a lot of reasons for doing this. And I hope after this is over, and I also think, let me just tell you a sobering message, that I think there's going to be some people that are only going to come to your church once or twice a month. I think a lot of people are enjoying this live stream and may continue to want to live stream once a month or twice a month. So make sure you keep that connection alive. That's so very important. And I really believe that don't confuse, if you're experiencing a dip in giving, don't confuse that with people not being able to be in your building. The reason you're experiencing a dip in your giving is because people are losing their job. They're concerned about their finances. They're concerned about money. We're working with churches today that are getting a rise in income. I talked to a pastor this morning in the Midwest who's getting more income than ever, 3 times as many online viewers as they've ever had in their church. So it's not necessarily the fact that you're online that the reason people aren't giving. It's that people are going through this real economic downturn. So the bottom line is keep the live stream going and be intentional about it. And let me give you just a couple last few things that I think are important. Use graphics. If you have the ability, so many churches, even small churches today, have programs like Pro Presenter and similar programs where you can use graphics and you can put the scriptures on the screen. But I would say do more. Put your sermon notes on the screen, put key points to remember on the screen, remind people what church this is, remind people who you are. There's research out there that indicates when you use graphics on the screen, people remember 3 times as much of your message. So graphics are a powerful tool to keep up there. So if possible, talk to your media people, your communications people, and if you have that capability to put your scripture notes, your sermon points, other things. And also, as I said, people are tuning in and out throughout the live stream. So let's talk about getting those graphics up, who you are, where you're coming from, how can people reach you if they want prayer, if you offer that, that's important as well. So graphics are very important. Last couple things would be, make sure your live stream is available on demand. One of the biggest frustrations I'm experiencing is when I'm watching these live streams, when they're over, this graphic pops up that says the live stream service is ended. Well, guess what? What if I'm late? Your live stream should flip over to being videotaped or to playing back a video and go over and over and over again. I know one church I talked to recently said their live stream service, they will play 80 times the following week, 80 times the following week, and they will have far more people that watch the playback than ever watched it when it was actually live. So make sure that message is on demand, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or on your church site. Because listen, one of the things you'll discover is when you start live streaming after a while, you'd be amazed at how many international people are watching, people from outside your country. And they're in different time zones. They're watching at different times. So make sure your service is available on the live stream on demand as much as possible. I think that's really, really important. So I think the last thing I would say is this is really important. Your live stream during this COVID-19 crisis, your live stream is only the start. What you do on Sunday is critical. It's really important for keeping connected with your people. However, it's only the start. One of the things I'm recommending is during the week, go online. You can go on Instagram. You can go on Facebook. You can go on other platforms and just connect with your people. Just connect with your people. I've been working with pastors recently who are just going on with Instagram Live and just talking, giving people an update about what's going on, what outreaches they're doing, what the pastor is planning for next week, getting people ready for the service. And I would say at least 2 times a week. You could even do it more, but at least a couple times a week, reach out and connect with your congregation through other social media platforms. And I would just say this is the time to get engaged with social media. I know many pastors have hesitated, and many of you may have platforms for your church. You may have a church social media page. You may have a church Facebook page or a church Instagram page or Twitter feed. But let me tell you, that's good. but it's primarily a megaphone. A church social media feed is primarily used to tell people about the Christmas play coming up, or we're starting our service at 9 o'clock this week, or our youth camp is getting ready to start. And that's okay. But let me tell you, people follow people. They really want to follow people. So as the pastor, as a church leader, as the youth director, as a media person, whatever you do at your church, you should be really intentional about using social media yourself, because people really want to follow and I'll give you a great example. This sounds a little cheesy, but I got a call about 6 months ago from a pastor in North Carolina who told me that he said, I will post on social media. I'll post on Facebook, for instance, but I never respond to people. He said, I just don't go back. I never have. I've never gone back and responded to people. But he said, last week, a woman asked a question about church doctrine, how we believed about something on after a post I did on Facebook. And so he said, for some strange reason, I felt led to go back and talk to her. And so I did, and I explained what it was about. And he said, to my shock, she showed up at church on Sunday. And he said, then to my shock, at the end of the service, she came forward and accepted Christ. And he said, but then the next day, Monday morning, I got word that she had been killed in a car accident. And he said, I know this sounds over spiritual and it can sound cheesy, but he said, I just think, what if I'd never reached out and responded to that woman on social media? She would have never come to the church. She would have never accepted Christ. And she would have still been killed in a car accident on Monday. So I'll tell you, the stakes are higher than we think. You can't believe the number of people I've seen led to Christ, find people who have found churches. So this is the time for you to get serious. Don't just post stuff and walk away. Social media is social. So this is the time to really get in there and start talking to people. I had one pastor, Doug, you and I both know him, very, very, very successful pastor who he didn't really engage much with his people on social media. And I encouraged him to do it one time. And so some lady asked a question about something. He responded to her. And her next post was, oh my gosh, my pastor talks to me on social media. This is the most amazing church I've ever been to. She was thrilled. That's how excited people can get when they talk to you on social media. So guys, how am I doing? Are we covering some ground? Have you got any questions that have come in that we need to respond to?
Yeah, you're doing great. We've got about 15 questions that have come in.
Uh-oh.
And I'm just going to shoot them to you and you can ask them.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Okay, Phil. Stephen Jones said, can you give some insight into how to understand the different metrics of viewership across Facebook, YouTube? How should they be viewing attendance as an example?
That's a great question. And one of the things I'm encouraging people to do is worry less about your analytics and your metrics right now, simply because we don't have anything to compare this to. As I said before, this is the first time, certainly in my lifetime, and probably in history, where 100% of the congregation is on the other side of that camera. And so before, we could compare analytics on a typical live stream audience because we compared it to what normal services were like and when we would have them. But now things have shifted so dramatically that I'm just encouraging pastors and leaders not to get bent out of shape. Don't feel badly or depressed because of the numbers out there, because we don't really have benchmarks to compare it to in a world of the COVID-19 crisis. We don't have a comparison. But the things I would take a look at is, when are people tuning out? If you have this ability, and I would encourage you to talk to your media people, your communications people, if you have that person, or a teenager if you don't. When are people tuning in and out? One thing we're finding is that most people are fairly transient during the worship and music segment of the live stream, which means they're tuning in and out pretty regularly. And then they seem to lock in during the message. And this is interesting to me because for decades, we've known that with Christian television, if you're watching Jack Graham or Joel Osteen or Stephen Furtick or somebody, when you're watching a Christian television program, we know people tune in because they want to see the message, not the music. I mean, people today have Spotify, they have DVDs, they can download music from any place. And so they're not really looking for Christian music on television. They tune in to hear the message. So that's why with so many of these young pastors who have fantastic, worship teams, we don't show that on television because that's not why people tune in. We're kind of finding out that that's similar with a live stream. However, we want the live stream to be a worship experience. So I'm not saying ditch your music. I'm just saying keep an eye on it, because you may want to cut your music and worship set down a little bit and get to the message sooner. Now, it's not true of every church. We have a Pentecostal church in Ohio that is getting such a great response to their worship set. They're actually expanding it to like 45 minutes. But for most churches I've seen, people are pretty transient. They're not really in there during the worship set. So I would just say, do a song, maybe a couple songs at the most, then get to the message, because that seems to be what people are tuning into, because they get locked in at that point. So just look at where people are tuning in and out. Try to see where the numbers are high, low. You can, it's pretty easy to see when people are coming on board, and that'll tell you what people like, what they don't like. And really, other than that, don't let yourself get too depressed about this, because as I say, if you can put that service on demand and keep playing it back during the week, you'll end up getting a lot more numbers probably than you are during the live event.
Phil,
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, that's good. Tim Walker wants to know, is it better to stream live or do a recorded?
Another great question. You guys are on the ball. I have, in my experience, which is pretty extensive, I've not seen any evidence that one is better than the other. Here's my thing. Biddy Perez at church at Las Vegas loves the rush of doing it live. I mean, he gets so psyched up about doing it live. So he wants to do it live. God bless him. Run for it. Other guys that I work with, it makes them nervous to go live because they could have Wi-Fi problems. They're worried about the camera screwing up. They're worried about, a light falling over, something like that. So it all depends on you. And I can tell you, whatever you're comfortable with is the thing you should do. I've seen no evidence that being live is better than not being live. Even if you have a chat room, people don't know that it's not live, so they're still chatting away. They're talking about your message. And you could have even when you play it back, you want to have a host, you want to have an online pastor or host in the chat room to be answering questions and talking with them. But there's really no evidence. Now, the one thing I would say is there are some churches, and probably most people don't have to worry about this, there are some churches out there that are used to doing television, and they do their live stream so well pre-taped that it looks kind of like a TV show. And I don't like that. I actually like a live stream service that's a little rough around the edges. We want that feeling that it's real, that it's really happening and it's authentic and it's a real worship service. And so I just say that if you prefer to come in during the week, shoot it, put it together, and then play it back, that's fine. If you prefer to be live, that's fine. People don't know the difference. So either way is okay.
Yeah. Stephen Mandy Jones says, will a single static shot for 25 minutes lose the attention of a very distractible generation?
You know what? Not if you're good. Not if you're good. If the anointing is there and you're on fire, that's what matters. I'll tell you this. I do tell people this is during, trust me, I'm a television film producer, so I love angles. I love doing wacky stuff. I'm on the forefront. However, during this particular moment in time, during the virus, this is not the time to be uber creative. This is the time to connect. We need to connect with those people out there. The stakes are high. So my feeling is, yes, if you've done your prep, if you prepared, and you're really bringing people a word, it doesn't matter that you need to cut away. You look at that camera, you get that close up in there, and you share. And I've not seen any evidence that, in fact, I've talked about this a lot on my blog at philcooke.com. And as I've talked about it, I've seen pastors that the first week, man, they were cutting, they were moving all over the place. But then as I've seen the next weeks, they've started consolidating down to a single shot. And even great pastors and who reach younger people, a lot of these young contemporary guys are moving to that single shot. And of course, if you want to move a little bit, move. And if you need a couple cameras to capture that, that's okay. If you're a physical guy and you start waving your arms or need to, move in a bigger way, feel free to cut to that wider shot. But I'll tell you, when you're really, really getting serious with people and getting emotional and making those most important points, I just encourage you, get there on the close-up, and that's where people are.
Phil, I'm glad you said that, because for me, I get distracted when they're changing the camera every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And dizzy. So
yeah. Well, you know what? Let me say, and this probably has no relevance to you guys, but I grew up in a world of what we called multi-camera television. TV specials. Right? The Mandrell sisters television special, and Tony Orlando and Dawn. Everybody was doing big time TV specials back when I was young. Well, that went away, and now we have a generation of young media people that have grown up on YouTube, which is a single camera thing. And so it's funny, this younger generation of communications and media people in church, for the most part, have no clue what to do with multiple cameras. So if they have them, they just start cutting like crazy because they think that's what you're supposed to do. I've shot television specials, I've shot concert events where I had 17 cameras. And you know what? At certain times, I hone in on one because that's where the money is, that's where the power is. And so I think that it's part of my task has been working with younger church and media ministry people, helping them understand that how for me, cuts and dissolves are like periods and commas to a writer. They're a visual grammar, and you have to know how to use that. So don't let if you have a younger media person on your team, don't let them tell you, oh no, we have to be cutting here and here and here and here. No. Here's where it's at. I'm amazed at the number of churches that will do this shot where they cut to the side and the preacher's preaching away and they cut to this side shot like this. Well, you don't have a conversation with a friend at the coffee shop where you turn to the side, don't look at him. I don't get it. I want to see you. I want to see your eyes. Talk to me. Don't talk to the side. So sorry, that was my little pet peeve coming across. I apologize.
Don Milner says, what happens when we come back to church in the sanctuary? Do we still come in close, music, etc.?
Well, that's an interesting topic on a lot of levels. And we were talking about that a little earlier this morning about what will happen. We're seeing, I'm going to start, I put out on social media, I'm asking churches to send me their plans for what they're thinking about, because now is the time to be thinking about it. As you may know, a church in San Antonio Sunday opened up. And they had a super complicated system. They had chairs in small groups for families that are away from each other. And then they had a card system where they put cards on all the chairs. And if you sat down in a chair, you could flip the card next to you so nobody would sit there. It was a really complicated system. And as could be expected, very few people showed up. It didn't work. And so I think it's just too soon at this very moment that we're recording this. It's probably too soon, but it's not too soon to start thinking about how we're actually going to make it happen. So a lot of people are saying, what happens if we can only have 10 or 20 people in the room? What happens if we can have 100 people in the room? So just some off the top of my head thoughts. This is the time to fix your overflow rooms, because it's not how many you have on your campus, it's how many you have in a room. So if you have an overflow room that's wired with a TV monitor and audio, you can have another 20 people in there, another 100 people in there, depending on what the rules are in your particular state or your country. When you open up, it varies. So I just think that this is another reason why I think we need to keep our energy focused on the live stream for quite some time. Even if people start coming in, it's not going to be a legal thing. It's going to be a behavior thing. Even if I can go back to church, do I want to go sit in a room with 500 people? Probably, I don't know, maybe not for a while. I'm a little bolder and I'll probably take that chance, but a lot of people won't. So I think it's more behavior, and we're going to have to kind of let people come at their pace. But as far as camera positions and things like that, you're going to have a smaller crowd for a while. So keep the cameras up close, move the cameras, expand the cameras as the crowd expands. And keep it close up. And I even when we're totally back to normal, if you have 500 people in that sanctuary, the power of a closer-up still matters. I mean, I tell you for this reason, if you're a big enough church that you have big video screens on the sides, you need to have a close-up in there virtually all the time. Because look, if I'm on the back row of your church, I'm already seeing a wide shot. I don't need to see a wide shot up in the big screens. The purpose of the big screens is so I can see your face. I can see a close-up. I want to see the emotion and the power in your face. So even when we go back to crowds, understand the power of a close-up is still really important. You don't have to get so uncomfortable it's awkward. But if you get a waist to a chest, probably a chest shot is even better. Kind of the way I'm framed right now in this Zoom call is where you need to think about being. Hope that makes sense.
It did make sense. Tim Walker's asking, I've noticed a lot of simplified sets without the frills and thrills and shorter messages. Is this the trend?
Yeah, and when I talk about trends, I always couch that in saying, first of all, know your congregation. That's the secret to this whole thing. There is no trend. I mean, certainly some people are doing shorter messages. Some people are getting off the stage and going to their home or doing it in another room in the building. But what I always say is, what does your congregation dig? As I mentioned, this one church that we've worked with, we discovered their congregation loves praise and worship. So they're actually expanding that. Andy Stanley in Atlanta, for instance, he's a conversational guy anyway. So he's sitting at like a tall table and on a stool and just kind of sharing from his heart. That's what he's doing. And he's doing it from what looks like someone's home. And in fact, he had his praise and worship team in the living room doing their praise and worship a couple Sundays ago when I watched. And so we're seeing a wide trend. Don't feel like you have to stay on the stage at your sanctuary, but if that's easier, if it's wired to do it, and that's where your cameras are and they can't be moved for whatever reason, fine. But I would encourage you, experiment. I'm a huge advocate that churches need a research and development department. Think like a R&D division. What's working this week may not work next week. Remember, we're off the map here. This is uncharted territory, and we just don't have locked in answers. So be open, see what your congregation, and I would say that you mentioned the sets. The set, the background behind me doesn't really matter so much if you're in that close up and we're on you. And I would say just make sure whatever that set is, be far enough away from the background that it goes a little out of focus. I mean, on a camera, I want you, the pastor, to be in focus. That's where I want to drive people's eyes. So don't be backed up against the wall where everything is in focus and they're looking at that picture over there or that picture over there. I want to look at you. So if I was doing this as a live stream, I would move as far as I could away from that back wall back there because I want them to focus on me. So let it slightly go out of focus. I probably wouldn't make it as busy as that is back there. I'm shooting from my home office, so that's all I got. But if I was doing a live stream, you don't want the background to be busy. It's nice if it could be slightly darker than you, not black or anything, but just slightly darker because I want you to pop. I want the eyes to be drawn toward the speaker, toward the worship leader, toward the singer. Last funny thing I would say is if you're doing it from your home, and please tell this to the worship. I saw one church, many of you have seen where they're doing the worship team from different homes, in the little boxes. Every singer has their little box they're singing in. That's cool. I'm good with that. But in one church I watched did that last week, and the main singer, the lead singer, who was just a great singer. This gal could really sing, but she'd set up her camera in her home and she was standing in front of a mirror, and in the mirror behind her, you could see her unmade bed reflected in the mirror. So it's like she's standing there in front of an unmade bed, sheets piled up, pillows, and doing this worship set for this church on Sunday. I'm thinking, come on, guys, just think about where you are and what people see around you. Because trust me, that was a distracting thing. So just, put some thought into the environment you're in before you go.
I'll give you one better than that. A friend of mine, all dressed up, but he's got his boxer shorts on and he doesn't pay attention to right here. There's this vase thing and it's reflecting. It's like brass.
That's awesome.
He's standing there in his underwear. So yeah.
I love that.
Michael Ainsworth is asking, how do you get people to stay engaged in the live stream? And are there some do's and don'ts?
Well, I think we've talked about do's and don'ts so far a lot, but I think as far as getting them engaged in the live stream, I think I would tell you this. During this virus period is not the time to be going into your deep theological insights on various issues. This is not the time to expound on Revelation. This is not the time to go into the multiple meanings of Daniel's prophecies. I would say people are desperate. They're really searching. You've got them in a situation where they're at home. They're probably getting dressed. They're having breakfast. They've got their kids, crazy kids running around, distracting them. This is the time to be, I don't want to say shallow, but it's the time to be focused on hope. What does the Bible say about getting me through this crisis? What does the Bible say about, what are God's promises about my financial future? What does the Bible say about how I should be engaging with my family right now? Those are the topics people are concerned about. So if you want to keep them engaged, my suggestion is keep it inspirational, keep it motivational. Let me tell you, when this is over and they're back in the room, you can go back into the multiple layers of Daniel's prophetic anointing. That's great. Bring your dispensational chart of the ages out. That's okay for that. But for now, be simple, be clear. Online, people are looking for clarity more than they are depth. And I think, preaching on issues that will help them most immediately would be what I'd encourage you to do.
Hey, Phil, this is Doug. We have on the call with us a leader of a Pentecostal denomination in Tennessee, James Walden Jr. He's asked the question, when's a good time to put your information about giving during the live stream? Is that something you just keep up the whole time or certain times to do it?
That's a great question, James. I wouldn't keep it up the whole time. Here's what I would, if I was pastoring and I was doing a live stream tomorrow, what I would do is I'd want to talk about it at the very beginning. Maybe go online a little earlier before the service starts. I mentioned earlier that a significant number of people will be there. And just give people an update on what the church is doing and how their giving enables you to do that. If you're doing a food drive, if you're helping single moms in your community, whatever you're doing, bring that up early on in the service or during your greeting, maybe at the top. Let people know early on, then do the worship set. And then as you transition into the message, maybe you talk about it there. And again, you're not just asking for money, but you're giving them an opportunity to support the vision of what the church is doing. And then I do it again at the end. Now, every time you talk about it, bring up how they can give as a graphic. If you could possibly do that, bring up the website. If you have giving apps that you use. And by the way, one thing we're seeing is the churches that are doing the most, that are the most financially successful during this virus period are the churches that had the highest rates of online giving before the virus started. So let me tell you, this is the time to start enrolling your people in online giving. If whatever, I know Lifeway right now, if you Google Lifeway Generosity, they're offering their online giving program free for any church right now that needs it, if you don't have an online giving program. So there are some out there like Lifeway that's offering theirs for free. And so this is the time to motivate people to give online or give through, cash apps and things like that. But whenever you mention, this is something for your media people to know, whenever you mention who you are, I want to see it. I want to see your name on the screen and what church you're from. If you talk about, reach out to us, make sure they're putting up the website. If you're talking about giving, make sure they put up information on how to do that. Your communications team, your media team needs to be listening to what you're saying. And whatever you're talking about, they should be able to supply that graphic at that moment. This is a good reason why pre-taping sometime is helpful, because you can nail that a little bit better when you're in the editing room. But even if you're live and they can put in the graphics live, that's a good time to do it. So just my advice would be, whatever you do it multiple times through the live stream. Not overbearing, not make it a big offering deal. But I would just say you're encouraging people to support what you're doing. You're encouraging people you're congratulating your people on helping you do these outreaches and keep the church going and maintain these things during this crisis.
Two more real quick, sort of a little bit tied together. Somebody had asked, what platform are we using right now in sending this one out? And maybe Jamie, you or Matt or Josh can reply to that. And sort of related to that was on platforms, you run into problems where you have a video lag, buffering kinds of things. Somebody was asking, what causes that? Can anything be done about it, particularly on live streams? So I don't know if Jamie or somebody wants to make a comment about what we're using right now, or Josh.
Yeah, so we're using Zoom right now, and then they're plugging it into your Facebook Live, but this is a Zoom platform.
Yeah, as far as lag and things that go wrong, you know what? There's a million things that'll go wrong out there. I did a Instagram interview with Jay John in the UK yesterday on Instagram, and it froze up halfway through. And so, and I have great Wi-Fi here, but I would certainly test your Wi-Fi if you have a web person. in your church. Test your Wi-Fi. A lot of it depends on how many people in your neighborhood are watching Netflix at the time you live stream. There are a million issues that could go wrong. I mean, the World Wide Web is so complicated. I'll never figure it out. But there are things, but you know what? That's part of life. My suggestion is this is the time to bring in somebody. If you need to pay somebody to come in and just check your system out, go through it, figure it out. And let me tell you, you don't have to have an expensive camera system in your church to do it. I had a pastor call me the week before the virus locked down everything. A pastor called me and said, I have never live streamed. And we have a teenage girl in our congregation that got lupus and her immune system is compromised. And he said, she can't come to the service. So her mom called and said, could you live stream the service this Sunday so she could watch? And he said, I didn't even know what live streaming was. And so I called my teenage daughter and she hooked up a phone and we live streamed the service. And he said, not only did this girl with lupus get to see the service, but he said, lo and behold, I discovered we had 45 other people watching the service. So even if you're doing it with a phone, it's better than nothing. And let me say this, don't be discouraged. Even if you get 10 people, just 10 people watching you on your live stream, don't be frustrated. Let me tell you, for most of you guys, if you had 10 visitors coming into your church on a Sunday, you'd be thrilled to death. You would roll out the red carpet, you'd hug them, you'd welcome them to the church. So why not get that excited about 10 people watching on your live stream? So anytime you get the opportunity to share the gospel with one or more people online or anywhere else, that's a win for me. That's a win. And you'll build up. They'll tell people about it and they'll tell people. By the way, I don't mean to rant here, but one other thing. When this is over, and you can even do it now, maybe do it even now during the live streaming, encourage your people to talk about the church on social media. Figure this, if you've only got 20 people in your church, if they all went on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and started talking about how awesome their church is, they would be retweeted and reposted by other people. Before long, it's 60. Before long, it's 80. Before long, it's 100 or more people talking about your church online. I'm baffled that pastors don't get up every Sunday in the pulpit and say, hey, if this church has meant something to you, if you love what's happening here, what God's doing in this church, talk about it on social media. Tell your friends on Facebook about it. Blog about it if you have a blog. Talk about it on Instagram. Wherever you are, chat about it, because social media is exponential, and you'd be amazed at how much. And let me tell you, the more your church is talked about on social media and the more they use the website, the more it rises in the search rankings. The more likely your church is going to come up when people are searching. So think about that. And also one other just quick thing, this is the time to think in the future about having an online pastor, someone in your church who's not just a social media person. You know, many churches have a social media person. All they do is post. Let me give you a secret. You start searching the web. Twitter is a good example. Instagram is another example. Start searching for hashtags like depressed, just moved in town, moving day, hashtag moving day, and have your person reach out to those people. Literally reach out to those people. All the people that posted with a hashtag moving day or just arrived in town, and you can search within a 10 or 20 mile radius of your church. Let me tell you, you start personally responding to those people. Dave Adamson, who does social media for Andy Stanley, I talked to him the other day on a podcast, on my podcast, and he said he found a guy in Atlanta that had lost his dog. He'd posted, does anybody search for your dog? And he said, our church reposted that. And our pastor said, what are you doing? That's somebody's lost dog. Why is our church reposting that? Lo and behold, 3 days later, the guy found his dog, went on social media and said, I want to give a special thanks to North Point Community Church because they reposted, and that's what helped find my dog. And that's an awesome church. I'm going to visit one day. And he had about 2,000 social media followers that saw that post. So social media is not something we just put up, today's the day the Lord hath made, let's rejoice and be glad in it, or some excerpt from your sermon. We can actually, if we got intentional about social media, we can reach out and start ministering to people online, and you'd be amazed at the impact it would make. So sorry about the sermon there, but I'll tell you, if we took it seriously, we could win this world.
Great, Phil. Listen, we're going to start to wrap this up. Josh, you got any follow-up question or comments you want to make?
You know, I don't. I hope everybody listens. I think it's so practical. If you apply what you've heard, it's some of the best stuff I've heard. You've done a phenomenal job. So I would just say, great job. We've learned a lot. People are texting me this whole time saying, this guy's awesome. This is great stuff. So you're doing a
Well,
great
let me,
job.
let me just throw in that if you guys have further questions, if you have things that are really bothering you, you can send them through Doug or Josh or the team, or go to philcooke.com. Our email address for our company is info@cookemediagroup.com. That's the name of our company. If you want to send an email to info@Cooke Media Group, Cook with an E, we'll respond. I promise you, we'll respond and get back to you if you have a real challenge. We're happy to help.
Phil, thank you. And listen, I want everybody that's watching, I want to make sure you are able to do that. Go to Phil Cooke with an E on the end, .com, to take advantage of the resources he has there. And also take advantage of what we've got on IPHC.org. We have a lot of resources there. World Missions has some really valuable information about what's happening globally and how you can help, because a lot of places around the world are in desperate need. Discipleship Ministries has some great resources about kids ministries and young adult ministries, discipleship ministries there. EVUSA and what Josh and them are doing, a lot of great resources for pastors. So thanks so much, Phil. What a blessing. Thank you. Great to see you again.
Thank
Bless
you.
you
Great
and
to
your
do it.
family. And thanks to all of you for joining us. God bless.